the parallel sessions. My name is Charles Betts. You probably heard me before this morning. So this particular parallel session is a bit different from the other ones. So I hope you will bring some questions to me, because otherwise it will be very short. I will just very briefly maybe speak about the 3 different programs that I cover. The reason why I chose this format is simply because in the past, what we used to do is just present you with a number of calls that were coming up. And instead, I thought of giving you a long list of topics that I will just read aloud. I think that's not a lot of added value. I was more hoping that you would bring some questions to us. Let me briefly introduce the 3 programs, and then we'll get hopefully to some. I will show you some of the upcoming deadlines, even if they are tentative, and some of the upcoming topics, that even again if they're very tentative. And then it's really your time to ask questions. So I hope you will have some. Otherwise, it will be very short. So the ERC program, it's mainly focusing on public research. Really, it's about excellent research. It's about providing relatively large financial contributions to research groups and principal investigators in all different fields that are really committed to high breakthrough type of cutting edge research. If you're not familiar with this program, it's quite famous. So generally, if you're not familiar with it, it means it's not a program that's very essential for your activities, if you're a company, for example, etc. Having said that, the ERC does have such a high standard of fame, but also standard of quality that some people are a bit too hesitant and too self-selective. So if you're interested, or if you're just wondering what it is about, I highly recommend getting in touch with us. In my experience, most of the projects, at least most of the successful projects that we see in the ERC, they really take a number of years to really ripen and come to before they're even submitted. So obviously there are always exceptions, but it's something that will build over time. Some people tend to think that they have to wait until the very last minute of the eligibility window before they submit, because they think this way they have a better CV. Statistically speaking, that's not necessarily always the case, but of course, if you're just waiting for a very high throughput paper to be published, then it might, of course, you might have better chances if you can show it in your CV than before. The Micrae Curie program, MSCA program, is a bit more diverse. It consists of, let's say, 4 main sub-programs that each have a bit different target groups. You have the what used to be called the ITNs, the International Training Networks or European Training Networks. Now they're called doctoral networks. It's the same thing still. It's consortia-based projects, open projects. So you define, the consortium defines the topic, and it's about funding PhD level, so PhD students, PhD student projects. 3-year projects. So if your PhD takes longer than that, then you need to find a way to pay for the 4th year. They are really meant to sort of be at the cutting edge of new disciplines, train a new generation of researchers in areas that haven't existed before. It's a nice way to get public-private collaborations going, because you can somewhat easily involve private partners, either as direct beneficiaries or as just a partner where the PhD will go for an internship or a secondment for a couple of months. It's an interesting program. It's very competitive, unfortunately. It's a bit compared when you look, they're comparable programs nationally when you look at FNR, for example. you have these I forgot the name, the doctoral schools, basically the program. I think Pride, is it Pride maybe? The idea behind it is very similar, except that you have here this international aspect of it, that you really involve multinational centers across Europe and sometimes even beyond on a specific topic. Then you have my favorite topic is the used to be called the individual fellowships. Now it's called the postdoctoral fellowships. These are really single beneficiary projects where one applicant, meaning one postdoc, applies with one host. The host being the organization that will host the researcher for the duration of up to 2 years, up to 3 years if we're speaking about a global fellowship. That's again a specific case. And if you're anywhere close to our communication networks, you probably realize that we have every year a support initiative for this program, where we ask participants, public or private, from Luxembourg to send us their topic areas of interest. And we will look for potential postdocs across the world on these topics, because very often that's the limiting factor. If you're a very famous professor at a famous university, people will come to you. But since this is a program that very well benefits also startup companies, but also young research groups in academia, it's something that might need a bit of extra help, and that's where we're stepping in. So we are just finishing up now the expressions of interest from Luxembourg. We have a record number this year again. So something that seems to have a lot of interest. If you still haven't done so and are still interested, please let us know, let me know, and we can see what we can do. And then there are two more programs, three more programs. There's the co-fund program. That's a bit more inside the Marie Curie, sorry. This is more about funding fellowships. So this is more for at a high level, let's say, where these kind of programs get submitted. So that could be, for example, the FNR in Luxembourg, but it could be the university or a large research center. It could also be a private large research center, but these are sort of the typical participants. There's the what used to be the RISE program, so the Research and Innovation Staff Exchange Program. Now it's just called the Staff Exchange Program. Again, another program within Marie Curie that's not for creating new positions, but that's really for staff, so existing staff, which can be research staff, but it can also be administrative staff. And this is again a consortium-based program, where you build a consortium and you exchange your staff with the other members, with the idea, of course, being to train people, get knowledge flow between public and private, but also inside Europe, outside Europe. So it can be an interesting program that's not overly used in Luxembourg. I would say for now we are really in the Marie Curie program focusing mostly on the doctoral networks and the postdoctoral networks, postdoctoral programs, fellowships, sorry. And then finally, there's the health program. So health program, it's cluster number 1. So this works similar. It's part of pillar 2. For you, this doesn't matter so much, but this is a thematic area where you have these typical calls that get renewed, updated every year, I should say, and then generally renewed every 2 years. So you have sort of a visibility for the next 2 or 3 years generally, which calls will come. Right now, we are sort of in an intermediary phase where we don't know exactly yet all the topics in any detail that will come at the end of this year. There are some deadlines coming up, but I don't think it's worth mentioning these calls in any detail, because these are deadlines either with around February or around April. So if you haven't, if you're not part of consortia for these calls, I don't think it makes a lot of sense to invest a lot of energy now into finding a consortium for these. So when we're speaking about the deadlines that will be coming up in this fall, so there's not much that I can tell you. There's some loose, information that I will show you in the next slides, and maybe they're helpful, but take these with a large amount of salt, because they, this can be changing, and especially with regard to the deadlines. So that's also the reason, because we don't have so much concrete information for which calls will be coming. I didn't think it would make sense to speak a lot about it, because there's not a lot to speak about. For ERC and Marie Curie programs, I think that the limiting factors are more about visibility. So do you know the program? Do you understand the program, if it is made for you, and how you could fit in these programs and how you can benefit from it? The advantages for the Marie Curie, I would say mostly because ERC is more really, as I said, academic. For the Marie Curie, because it's certainly something that's open thematically, so a lot of things can fit, but not everything can fit. If you're just speaking about developing a commercial activity or developing your product or bringing it to the market, it's generally not these type of projects that will make it in the Marie Curie program. There should really be a research question behind it. But it can be very interesting for both companies and academia. And I would say the vast majority of people that really take the time to try and understand the programs will find one or the other that will be a good fit for them. So having said that, I'll move to my first slide, which is sort of the very tentative deadlines for ERC. For Marie Curie, these are the definite deadlines, so they are more concrete. But for ERC, some of them are still very much speculative, because we haven't voted on the work program for 2023 yet. So take that again with some caution. So the first deadlines coming up, obviously, is the Consolidator Grant. So in case you don't know, I will just briefly explain. There's several programs within ERC. They're all quite similar, with the exception of Synergy and POC. They just reflect the different career stages of the researchers that can apply for them. And these career stages are generally expressed in the time that has passed after the completion of your PhD. There can be some sort of extensions for these eligibility windows for certain reasons, most notably for parental leave. But there can be other reasons. And if you have any doubt, please get in touch with us. So the first deadline will be the Consolidator Grants. This will be coming up in March. So I'm 99% sure that everybody who wants to submit by then is quite advanced with their proposal, because otherwise it's such a competitive program that it doesn't make much sense. So you see here the eligibility windows, so that you see in which areas you fall. The next one will be the advanced grants, which will be coming up in end of April. And I think the call has just opened in the funding and tenders portal. The advanced grants, they don't have a specified amount of years after your PhD. Generally, they're considered for people really that are more senior than consolidator type of applicants. But this is not mandatory. You don't even need, in principle, a PhD to submit an advanced grant. But you need to have made very significant contributions to your respective field. The POC, they are a bit different. So the POC are the proof of concept grants. They are smaller lump sum based grants, and they are you can only apply for them if you have successfully received any other ERC grant before. Then we come to the more tentative programs. So the 2023 calls, as I said, this is my pure speculation. Looking in the crystal ball, this can be true or it can change, but this should give you some idea. So the Synergy grants most likely will come back to another to call deadline around November this year. Synergy grants, they're again a particular type of ERC, because they are sort of a consortium of ERC grantees. So ERC grantees doesn't mean people that must have received an ERC before. This can be new applicants, but it's just at least 2 different research groups, PIs, principal investigators, need to apply for it, and up to 4 principal investigators. It's relatively flexible. So obviously it's meant for projects that really significantly go beyond the capacity of a single principal investigator to reach. They're generally meant for very interdisciplinary type of work, but again, there's no clear definition on what that is. But you sort of get the idea, I think. These different PIs, principal investigators, they can be from the same institute, they can be from the same floor, they can be from the same country, but they don't have to be. They can be from multiple different countries. This is really up to you. They can be from multiple different experience levels. So imagine a starting grant type of applicant from Luxembourg applying together with an advanced grant type of applicant from Luxembourg together with I don't know, a consolidator type applicant from France or whatever. Importantly, one of these 2, 3, or 4 applicants within an ERC Synergy consortium can even be based and stay based outside of Europe. So that's important. So imagine you can involve a researcher from the US or from, I don't know, Japan, or you name it, Canada, in this consortium and apply together, so without them having to move to Europe or something like that. So these are very large projects. I think the budget is 10 million, and there can be up to 5 million additional funding for certain type of equipment and specific needs for up to 6 years projects. Then the next starting grants, most likely again, will be also around October or so this year. There I give the pretty, this should be pretty solid, I think, the eligibility window, which should tell you if you're eligible for this one, or if you have to go for the Consolidator Grant, taking into account, of course, that you can change depending on these factors that I mentioned before. By PhD date, there's been a new definition now of what they mean with this, and then I think now it's changed, if I'm not mistaken, to the PhD defense date, because for some countries they actually award sort of a PhD degree, but then they have an official PhD defense significantly later than that. So if you're in doubt about these kind of definitions, then we have to see by case. There's no need to get into this too deeply now. And then the advanced grants, they will likely change a bit in their deadline next year because they now have the interview stage as well. Before, it used only to be the starting and the Consolidator grants and the Synergy grants that had an interview stage. Now it's also the advanced grant applicants that need to have an interview. In general, the revision process, if you're not familiar with ERCs, there's 2 stages. There's one stage. You basically write one proposal with 2 parts. Well, there are more parts, but let's say it's 2 parts. And it's to some degree 2 parts of different complexity and granularity. And in the first stage, you basically address the panel that you chose, a thematic panel, but it's more a generalist audience. Whereas in the second stage, the full proposal with all the details and jargon, etc., this goes to external reviewers that are really the reviewers that you would get if you submit a publication. So these are really experts in the field. So hence the 2 different stages. At the second stage, you will be, if you pass the first stage, you will be invited to the interview in the second stage, and in parallel receive the questions during the interview from the reviewers. Then we move to the Micrae Program. You can see here the deadlines. So the co-fund, as I said, again, it's a bit of a special case, so probably not for 95% of you of much interest. The Staff Exchange SE could be of interest. PF stands for the Postdoctoral Fellowships, certainly of interest, potentially at least to, I would say, a large majority of people attending our conference today. Then the doctoral networks, these are, again, the consortium-based PhD networks. So you can see the deadlines here. They should be pretty solid. So we move to the health cluster. So this is very tentative and very general, so don't pin me on any of these things that I mentioned here, but this should give you a rough idea of rough topics that should be coming. And we are scheduled to have a discussion, more in-depth discussion on the program committee level on these topics soon. And at that stage, we'll, we might know more. So if these, if any of these topics are of interest and relevance, but also if you see things that are relevant but not present here, please get in contact so we know that you're interested, so we can keep you in touch. I'll try to do that on my own anyways whenever I see something coming up, but nobody's perfect, and sometimes we forget somebody. So it's always good to have a good exchange, and so that we are also somewhat on top of what your research plans and priorities are for the next years. So you can see here the list. I'm not going to read this. You can also see the slides afterwards from the recording, but quite broad. And I already here I left some things out. So let's see if they will stay in the final program. This is not clear yet, but please, if some of these really ring a bell for you, let me know in advance. Then whenever we get a bit more detailed in the topic text discussions, I know that we can come back to you more personally and have an exchange on that. So as I said, there are calls coming, calls with deadlines in February and April this year. So this is for the 2022 work program. So probably too close for if you're not already heavily involved in them. And then there should be the next deadline should probably be around September or so this year, and April or February in next year. And then we can't forget the new joint undertaking, IHI, and the Innovative Health Initiative. This is the follow-up program of IMI, IMI, the Innovative Medicines Initiative, IMI 2 actually, because there used to be a program before that already. Why didn't they just go with IMI 3? The idea is that they changed a bit from, so it used to be, it's a joint undertaking, meaning it's a public-private partnership between the European Commission and the industry. And so the industry under IMI used to be the pharmaceutical industry, FPR. This is the European Association for the pharmaceutical industry. And now we have more partners in this joint undertaking on the industry side. So there's MedTech Europe, there's the biotech industry, there's COSIR, there's Vaccines Europe. So a few more industries, and especially obviously is the COSIR, so which comprises more digital image analysis, things like this. So this will certainly bring new partners and new topics to the program. So they wanted to change the name a bit. But the working, while we don't know all the details yet, because the joint undertaking is really just starting up. As you probably saw when you were interested in this remotely, there was the launch, not the launch, but the sort of introduction info day for IHI today. So I'm pretty sure that the recordings will be made available afterwards if you want to have a look. You can also simply go to their website and register for the newsletters, and then you will the topics that are listed here, they are just copy pasted from the website. So this is public information. As far as I can say, the IHI will work to some degree like IMI, and to some degree it will change a bit. What do I mean with that? IMI was a bit IMI. IMI, I really never quite sure how I should call it. Had a particular funding mode where sort of the industry, so the final consortium would be composed of industry partners from FPIA, the big companies that have sort of defined the call. And they will look for a matching public consortium that can include SMEs as well, but most of the time it's really more public research and patients organizations, etc. And so in the past, it used to be that, okay, you as a you build a consortium, you answer the call. The call is already very much, the call text is very much defined. So because the industry partners more or less define what they want to see here. And so the idea here is that you write your consortium proposal, your public consortium proposal, and a few other consortium might do so as well. And then the best one will be picked and matched with the industry. So there's only one industry consortium that will be matched with one public consortium to make one project. So in IHI, we will still have this, but on top of that, there will also be additional calls that will probably work a bit more like the type of cluster one, the health cluster calls. But the important factor there, and this is not entirely clear to me yet, how this will work in practice, is also there you should involve some of the partners from some of the industry partners, and they're not defined yet. So they will also compete against each other in these sort of more open calls. But it's important to involve them because they will provide at least part of the funding in kind. And so that's sort of the general eligibility criteria for this type of calls. So how this exactly works, we will see. I will be the state representative for Luxembourg in this program, so I should know more about this. I will be joined with François Linners from the Ministry of Economy, who has been in the past programs the state representative for Luxembourg. And together we'll convey the messages to you as best as we can. So again, you see some topics here, but they are very reminiscent of what has been there in IMI in the past, and have a bit more of this new industry partner aspect. So I see a first question, and that is about the topic of the digital twin. It's unfortunately, I cannot give you much explanations because it's not. We don't know either. You have to imagine these kind of topics that I mentioned here, or topic ideas that I mentioned here, as sort of loose ideas that either the Commission or the member states throw out, and everybody had sort of a joint reflection. And now we will see as soon as we have a proposal for the first draft from the European Commission, we'll sort of have a better idea. But digital twin will go, to my understanding, in the direction of digitally, mimicking either a part of an organ or a part of an organism, a part of an organ function, or maybe a whole organism as whole, something that should go in these directions. So there are certainly a number of examples also of European projects in the past on digital twins in health. And I would suppose that it goes into that sense. But really, if you have any strong opinions, let us know by email or so, that we can raise these issues to the Commission. Let's imagine that you are very much interested in one aspect and not another. That's something that we can, if we feel that this is of interest for Luxembourg, that we can convey to the European Commission, and maybe it gets taken up into the work program, maybe not. But these are sort of, keywords that are very useful for us to sort of get a good understanding of what is needed and wanted for Luxembourg. So I'm looking at the questions tab, I'm looking at the chat tab. I'm basically out of things that I wanted to say. And I don't want to go on rambling and not provide you any valuable knowledge. So please, again, I will, stay still here if you need more time to reflect on some questions. But but it's really the point where you can send in some questions, and if you're not comfortable launching them in such a semi-public format, please just simply get in contact via email, and we'll try to help you in a more personalized way. That's generally the approach I think that works the best, to really understand what you need to help you understand the programs and the opportunities. So that's how we ideally want to operate in our team. Somewhat brief session. I hope you didn't expect much more from me. I'm sorry for that if you did. Thanks anyways for attending. I hope there will be one or more questions coming up, but if not, then thank you very much for being here and listening in, and hope to see you soon, either in person or digitally or some other way. And best of luck with your research, obviously. Thank you.